Navio, Redford's quarters. You fired at royalty. At an Aster! A princess! Redford cried out, his voice rough and firm as he stood before Wyatt and Clara, both of them unable to move as he glared disapprovingly. Of all the thick-skulled, irresponsible, idiotic, senseless, and near-treasonous things you could have done, Wyatt, you chose to actively and willingly, out of your own volition, target a princess of the Astorian Principality. Do you have any idea what punishment would befall you? Wyatt couldn't look away from the infuriated older man. Even if it wanted to, he wouldn't avert his gaze. After their landing, both he and Clara were summoned to the commander's quarters discreetly. The public reason was to discuss the finer details of the applied tests in private. In reality, it was exactly what he'd feared once the true realization of the consequences that would come for firing at a princess. But there was no regret in his heart as he gave the commander his answer. Death, Redford cut him off. Your head served on a platter and exhibited as a warning for all to see. The veteran pilot narrowed his eyes as he continued. I don't know if a higher force protects you, or if your luck simply transcends human understanding. Whatever the answer is, it will run out one day, and you've pushed it to its limits. Fortunately for you, I was able to file the incident under a targeting exercise. I fully apologize for my rushed decision, Commander. I simply didn't think... Precisely! Redford cut him off again, getting within an inch of his face and pressing a finger against his chest. You didn't think. And for what? To fulfill some childish desire of rebellion? To give form to dreams of audacity without repercussion? I expected recklessness from you, Wyatt, not blatant stupidity. Do you even have the slightest measure of regret? Wyatt stood firm, feeling Clara's gaze on him. There is no regret to be found within me, Commander. Despite the truth being that I fired at Clara, at Her Majesty it was never my intention or goal to harm her. Ah! Redford pulled back, his stern eyes burning through Wyatt's will, nearly causing him to give in to his commoner instinct to lower himself as much as he could before the man. Then should I feel reassured that you're not incompetent? Merely irresponsible and negligent in your duties? He asked, exhaling heavily. Perhaps I should demote you back to the rank of lieutenant for this gross display of rampant imprudence. Unable to contain herself anymore, Clara made her voice known. Uncle, please, Wyatt was merely... only to find herself cut off as the high-end cybernetic eyes of the man she loved as an uncle turned to her. Clara, you will remain silent! As if you're any better than him! Redford exclaimed, turning completely to face her. You are as much at fault as Wyatt is for firing that dummy missile at you. Thank Julius it was a dummy, he exhaled tiredly. The second he targeted your fighter, you should have stopped it all immediately. Instead, you gave in to your deep desires to go against tradition, expectations, and the very rules that protect royalty and the Aster bloodline. And for what? A momentary thrill? Some vain need to set yourself superior to all norms? Uncle... Did I give you permission to speak? Redford pressed on, taking a step closer to her. Let me remind you, Clara, that the only reason why I agreed to letting you sit inside a fighter cockpit was because I felt that you needed a proper reward in a safe, secure zone devoid of potential dangers, and under the care of a man who gained my trust. Tell me, was I wrong? Wyatt watched in silence, never before seeing the more serious, unrelenting side of his commander. He had to fight with every fiber of his being to avoid dropping to a knee, and he would have done that long ago were it not for Clara. It was the first time he'd seen her so helpless. She was always so in control, either distant and cold or playful and approachable. It was comforting, in a twisted sense, to see her reduced to a similar state to his, despite standing above Redford Kalen in rank, power, and status. Clara shook her head slowly. No, Uncle. I merely saw no reason to stop him. I was in no danger whatsoever, and it brought me immense joy. Truly it did. It was never my intention to worry you. Redford gritted his teeth tightly. Selfishness. Pure, unfiltered selfishness. Is the Aster bloodline cursed with it? Why must you risk your life without consideration? Clara frowned slightly, retaking her firm stance. My life was never at risk. There were no more enemies to be found. What is wrong with some minor indulgence after setting off the chains that bind my neck, even if for a blissful moment? Redford pointed a finger at her. There you are again, doing whatever you want, regardless of risks and uncaring of what I have to say. Is it so wrong to dream and forget the burdens of my position? She countered. What if you died? Redford shouted back, his gaze set on the purple eyes of the royal before him. Have you ever thought of that? What of our dream? What do you think we would do without you, Joseph? The room fell into a deep glacial silence as Redford realized what he'd said a moment later. Closing his eyes, he exhaled deeply. Slowly, he walked around his desk, sitting down and rubbing his temples with 2 fingers each. For what felt like an eternity, no one said anything until the blonde princess took the first step. Looking up, he found Clara's face, her eyes on the verge of tears, while his remained dry. Reaching out to grab her offered hand, he squeezed it tightly for a few seconds, then let go. I'll overlook this incident just this once, the commander began. I will not allow you to ever fly a fighter in anything resembling combat, Clara. For you to know how to pilot is a decision I will carry the consequences of. If the worst comes to happen and you find yourself in a situation where those personal skills will allow your survival, you will have a plausible option to take. Who would expect a member of the Royal House Astor to pilot a mere fighter or a shuttle for their own safety? He sighed again, shaking his head slowly. You can go, Clara. I have other matters to tend to with Wyatt. In response, the princess walked around the table only to give the gray-haired man a tight hug and a kiss on his cheek. I love you, Uncle Redford. I know, Clara. I love you too. So, for my sake, no more stunts like that, he pleaded. That is a promise I can't make, but I will try to endeavor to refrain myself, Clara said, letting go of the man. As she made her way to the exit, she paused for a moment to exchange a glance with Wyatt. Then she put on her helmet and left. Did that just really happen? Wyatt asked himself as he stared at the door for long, silent seconds until he slowly turned to face the aged commander. Had he witnessed such a scene before forming a friendly bond with the blonde princess, he knew he would have taken a sick sense of pleasure at seeing such vulnerability spawn from mightier-than-thou blue-bloods. But now there were no words for him to say, nor laughter to silence. Only questions and a gnawing sense of pity gripped his heart. An uncomfortable air settled between the 2 men until the commander cleared his throat. Are you not going to question what you've witnessed, Wyatt? Redford asked. His tone returned to that stoic, firm, immovable tone the young pilot had grown used to. Wyatt straightened his posture before replying. It's not my place to know matters that don't involve me directly, Commander. Family and personal matters are even less so. If it is your desire, sir, I will forget this incident. Redford nodded once, sighing deeply. Terrible and reckless decision-making aside, you can be sensible and wise beyond your standing in the most unexpected ways, Wyatt. I thank you for your discretion. His gaze suddenly turned stalwart. However, this doesn't mean that you won't be punished. It is high time I put your lessons to the test. For the next month, you will oversee the daily reports of our pilots, rate training scores, and review their recorded sessions. Understood? Internally, Wyatt winced at the dreaded prospect of facing his punishment. Regardless of his personal feelings, he nodded, never letting the commander see his distress. A suppressed "I obey" got stuck in his throat before his true answer came. Understood, Commander. Good, replied the aged commander before leaning forth. What I've wanted to discuss with you in private is twofold. The first issue is something that Cynthia has brought to my attention. It concerns one Declan Oakmoon, your oath-bound knight, and your confusion as to what to do with him and his servants. It seems you're struggling to find them a cemented purpose. Wyatt nodded, not too proud of himself. You are correct, Commander. I simply am at a loss. I can't dismiss him and be done with it. Or, well, I could, but I don't want the problems that could bring. I could have him guard the barracks and continue serving as a Marine, but what would he do under my service? Just be a guard? You should have brought this problem up before me sooner, Wyatt, Redford commented. The pilot nodded. I tried to, Commander, but I didn't know how to approach the subject. In that case, Wyatt, you can simply make him your seneschal, Redford countered, much to Wyatt's confusion. In essence, it is a ceremonial position, but one that carries significance and certain duties. If need be, a seneschal can rule in your stead over your lands, holdings, and businesses if you are unavailable or tending to other duties. However, in your case, Declan can simply serve as your intermediary in matters of noble protocol. His conduct and knowledge of protocol far surpass yours, and you can rely on him in that regard whenever social etiquette is required in your future ventures. My advice? Learn from him. The lessons I provide will give you a template to follow, and with Declan's help, you can polish them through example and imitation. Wyatt nodded, glad to have overcome that particular burden. Benefits aside, he didn't dislike Declan. "Thank you, Commander." Redford hummed, then the air around him felt heavier as his gaze intensified. "The second matter is far more important and pressing, I fear. It is another personal yet integral part regarding the future of your house, namely speaking, your commoner family." Wyatt felt his entire body freeze as every muscle in his body clenched simultaneously. Indeed, what of his family? His friends had made vague remarks in the past regarding the possibility of endangering his brothers and parents by mere virtue of being related to him. When he was just a knight banneret, the problem itself was far-fetched and distant, something he didn't need to worry about in depth. But now he was a baron, the head of his own nascent lesser noble house, House Staples. Which means more problems to worry about. Being a blue blood is such a pain in the ass, Wyatt thought with disdain. He wasn't blind to the dangers thanks to Cynthia and Clara's warnings and lessons on the realities of noble society and life. To get to him, other nobles and low-life commoners wouldn't hesitate to use them to achieve their goals. "What are my options, sir? I want to keep them safe," Wyatt asked, his posture faltering slightly. Redford hummed before intertwining his fingers. "3 options stand before you. The first is, in my opinion, the safest for you and your family. Your inexperience, their vulnerability in a social sense, combined with them being exposed to the machinations, scheming, and plotting of nobles around them without proper guidance, will only attract opportunistic vultures, vipers, and vermin of all sorts at best, and perils to their lives at worst. Unscrupulous nobles more than willing to tie them into servitude, only to strong-arm you into compliance. Simply put, they are a liability any sensible man would throw away without hesitation." He paused for a moment, his eyes set on Wyatt's heterochromatic gaze. "Your first choice is simply to reject your lineage and connection in blood, renouncing them as your family as you start your own noble house. A true new start, leaving your past behind and everything that entails." Wyatt frowned deeply. "I would rather venture alone and unarmed inside a ship overrun by Drazen before I do that shit," he proclaimed internally. After the momentary burst of rage that exploded in his chest passed away, he thought of Redford's words with more detail. He had to agree with the simple yet objective truth of what he proposed. If I truly want to keep my parents and brothers safe, I should reject them entirely. They don't need to deal with any of this blue blood nonsense. They can keep on living their lives. Besides, I should still be able to send them credits, right? It is the best option, he reasoned. But by rejecting them publicly, he'd renounce all connections with them. It'd be like shouting at the top of his lungs that he was ashamed of being the son of Wirt and Winona Staples, older brother to Weskel and Wham Staples, that he didn't love them, that he saw them as beneath him just because he was now a noble. The answer was obvious. He should reject them. It would make everything so much easier for everyone involved, at the price of betraying those he loved and himself. Just like any true, arrogant, self-righteous, glory-hungry, honor-obsessed, purity-stricken blue blood would do. I won't do it, Wyatt said firmly. May all the demons take him. He wasn't going to be another damn blue blood. He was Wyatt Staples, for better or for worse. Redford's lips twisted into a ghost of a smile that vanished as quickly as it appeared. I would have been surprised if you considered that option for more than half a second. Regardless, it is an option within your reach. Your second option is far more nebulous than the one you are currently sitting on. We call it a grace and waiting period. Simply put, this is the period in which a newly established head of the house ponders whether or not to embrace or reject their former commoner blood lineage. By and large, other nobles can approach your family, offering empty celebratory words and cordial greetings in an attempt to gain notoriety and some good graces. Many commoners who buy knighthood titles are quick and eager to marry or produce legal offspring as quickly as possible, so that the rules of the second generation may be enacted within scant years or less time. Ambition and the thirst for power are dangerous advisors when left unchecked, Redford explained, pausing for a moment to hum deeply. However, this grace waiting period is fleeting. Under normal circumstances, it may last no more than 3 months. In which, by the end of said time limit, if no decision is made, then rejection is considered to be the choice taken. After this time is concluded, no more windows may be opened to the former bloodline to join the new house. Most nobles won't bother to try to ingratiate themselves by approaching the commoner family after the first month has passed. For each day that passes without a final decision, it is assumed that rejection will be the final outcome, and thus, there is no point in wasting effort where no gains will be made. A rueful laugh rumbled in his throat. A scant few are those who don't reject their commoner origins. And almost a month has already passed, said the black-haired man. True, but your circumstances give you more time. Both because of this war and because tracking your family down, proving their relation and existence would be more difficult after your records were expunged from the Third Fleet's archives. Sincerely speaking, any information at the grasp of your homeworld's ruling house would take time to search through and verify as authentic with only a name and recent pictures to go from, said the commander with a deep frown. I see, Wyatt replied, his posture faltering a bit more. That means they're not entirely safe but won't gain too much attention, but only for a limited amount of time, which leaves the third option. Adoption, Redford finished for him. How does that even work, sir? I know what adoption is, but to adopt my own family? Wyatt asked, genuinely puzzled. Redford offered him a sympathetic smile. It is not as complicated as it sounds, Wyatt, though I admit it is slightly convoluted. My ancestors dealt with this issue during their time, after all. His smile dropped as he continued. Adopting your family, Wyatt, means and showcases a level of care and love for them that is evident for all to see. A loud proclamation of both aspects, in essence. This brings your commoner bloodline into the limelight. It doesn't turn them into nobles nor direct members of your house. They may carry the surname Staples, but they are not members of House Staples by the simple fact that they do not possess a noble title of their own. However, they stand above all other commoners in matters of perceived importance. Wait a moment, Commander. I don't understand. If adopting my family doesn't make them nobles or members of my house, then what are they? Wyatt asked, as a headache threatened to form. Of course, Blue Bloods would like to make everything as overcomplicated as possible, he thought with mounting frustration. A most curious conundrum, is it not? There is no official term or rank associated with such a position. Some refer to them as lordlings, an insulting praise if there ever was one. The vast majority simply refer to them as what they are, commoners. If you were to adopt your family, Wyatt, they would hold no claim to your lands, wealth, possessions, or titles since they aren't nobles and do not share the same gravitas that your house carries. They are, however, your family in blood, and that is where their potential power and the risks reside, Redford explained as he disentangled his fingers and proceeded to tap on his desk with slow, heavy thuds. Politically and socially speaking, they have no power, merit, or influence of their own. But by being embraced so openly and stridently, it signals that they have your attention, ear, and most importantly, your care. They are seen not as people, less so than equals, but more than mere commoners. Think of them as beloved servants or favored pets, in a sense. Now, this alone wouldn't be of great risk in most cases. But with House Astor as my patron, as a member of Clara's retinue, and with the favor of the prince himself bestowed upon me, Wyatt muttered, letting the unspoken conclusion trapped in his throat, searing his flesh as he suppressed a shout of frustration. You're in a most enviable position in the eyes of many, Redford pointed out, understanding the young pilot's turmoil. Equally so, thrice as many see you as not only a plausible threat, but as a real, palpable, growing one. You were elevated to the rank of Baron not long after your ennoblement as a Knight Banneret. How much further can your ambitions reach? How much more will your power and reach grow? What will you do with it? You're a destabilizing factor in the eyes of many, Wyatt. And believe me when I tell you that they're right. A single stone can cause a rock slide. One insignificant snowflake may start an avalanche. Who is to say they won't be caught up in its destructive path? So my only choices are to reject my family, driving them away and spitting on them in the process, or adopt them and put them at risk because I'm a selfish piece of shit, summarized the heterochromatic man. The commander made no comment. Closing his eyes, Wyatt went over the pros and cons of the three paths before him offered with cold indifference. Rejecting his parents and brothers was out of the question. He wouldn't do it. He couldn't. No matter how much sense it made and how objectively it was the right option for everyone involved, he couldn't bring himself to entertain the idea of going through with it. Pursing his lips slightly, his mind tried to conjure a solution, but there was little else he could do. All things considered, he could play a waiting game for some time. It left a bad taste in his mouth, but he could wait until the very last moment to adopt his family into his house. That would drive off most nobles, for a time at least. But after that, what would happen? He couldn't be with his family. Not while conflict raged and Duke Draymore remained. Would they be able to stand their ground without him? Kind gestures wouldn't convince his father. He was too cautious, polite, and submissive. But if pressed, he was certain his father would crumble. He was, after all, a gentleman. His mother abhorred violence and was by far the most staunch, centered, and firm. Yet he knew she'd crumble if danger presented itself before her. Westcall was cold, pragmatic, and calculative, yet earnest, sincere, and practical in everything he set his mind to. He always saw himself as the de facto protector of their family. He wouldn't be easily swayed or intimidated. That only left Wham, energetic, wild, and always optimistic with boundless eagerness. He didn't know what to expect from him other than that he'd obey whatever their parents commanded him to do. They lived in neutral territory, so they were safe from Draymore forces. But how true was that statement? The more he thought about it, the less he liked their odds. What would they do? What could they do? He blinked, surprised, as an idea formed in his mind. What would they do? He asked no one, but it gained Redford's attention. Indeed, what would they do in his place? There he was, trying to decide what was better for his family by himself, without taking into consideration the most crucial component of the entire problem, their opinion. However, first he had to ensure it was permitted. Commander, may I ask them what their opinion on the matter is and then make my decision? Redford nodded once, slowly and deliberately. The personal and familial affairs of my subordinates are outside my scope of interest and say, do as you must, Baron Staples, for the betterment of your house. Wyatt smiled, then saluted, his posture reinvigorated. Sir! Eternal Garden, Communications Lounge. Talk about a Clixall trapped in a hollowed-out Lakoa hive hole, Wescall said moments after his older brother finished telling them the problem he was facing as a right and proper blue blood. It was made all the worse when their mother revealed that she's received 4 different letters from 4 different noble houses in the span of a few hours. So there's nothing else you can do about it, Wyatt? I can do something or nothing, Wes. Those are my options. That's why I wanted to ask you what you thought about it, Wyatt replied, crossing his arms in frustration as he focused on his mother. But if the houses on Volantis already know who you are and have begun contacting you, it's only a matter of time before they keep pressing you. All of you. Is it really that bad, though? Wham asked, his jaw resting on his mother's right shoulder. Won't that mean that we'll get treated better? I wouldn't mind receiving some free items or being able to spend more of the credits you sent us, Wyatt. There's this VR Deep Dive set I've been interested in, you know? Wham, please, now's not the time, Winona chastised gently before focusing on her oldest son. Wyatt, sweetie, will you get in trouble if you don't decide quickly? Is that how it works? From what Commander Redford said, that's not the case, though he heavily implied I should make my decision sooner rather than later. If it were up to me alone, I would adopt you into my house, he groaned audibly. That will never not sound weird. You're my parents, yet I'd be above you in rank and social status as far as anyone is concerned. It feels wrong, like trying to put Goonie on a roasted piece of meat, he said, wincing at the memory when he tried to do that. The result ended on the floor shortly after he finished eating it. But that would put us in the sort of dangers we aren't ready to face, Wescall concluded. Will these letters turn into threats in the future? What if they just order us to contact you on their behalf or something? I believe we're all looking at this from the wrong angle, Wirt Staples said gently but firmly, finally making his voice known. You're all focusing on future dangers and too many what-ifs. Wyatt, son, you don't have to put yourself at risk just for our sake or feel like you've betrayed us by rejecting us. But, Dad, Wyatt tried, but stopped when his father raised a hand. Smiling that sweet, warm, tired smile of his, Wirt continued. You must do what you think will be best for your future, Wyatt. Like it or not, you're on a path we can't hope to follow. There's nothing wrong with being a little selfish, my son, and being too selfless can be just as damaging if you're not careful. So what if you reject us? That doesn't mean we'll be unable to provide for ourselves or, in your own admission, that you won't be able to help us with credits if we ever need them. Your duties to the prince and the principality at large must come first. Reaching for her husband's hand, Winona squeezed it gently as she smiled at her son. Your father is right, Wyatt. Your future is more important. I may not approve of everything you've done, but that doesn't mean I will stop loving you. For your sake and peace of mind, you should reject us. But in the end, it is your decision, not ours. Wyatt stared at his parents for the longest moment, his eyes scanning their faces, and found nothing but sincerity in their eyes. Slowly he focused on Wham and Weskal. "What about you two?" "I think it'd be great to get some attention from nobles for once," Wham shrugged before his lips curled into a smile. "And who knows, maybe I could meet a pretty noble lady." "Wham!" Weskal nearly growled at him. "Hey, I'm just saying, Wes. I think it'd be pretty amazing to have a lady as a girlfriend. A beautiful one at that. And hey, if Wyatt adopts us or whatever, then we could become knights or get trained to fight just like he does. Then we could be with him, killing traitors and enemies of the principality." He chuckled. "But hey, do whatever you want, Wyatt. You're the one with power, not us." Wyatt smiled, shaking his head slowly at the energetic antics of his younger brother. Silently, he turned to Weskal. For a moment, he focused on the line that divided his white skin from the heavy tan that covered his neck and face, a testament to the many hours under the starlight hunting for those giant dumb birds. "You, Wes?" "I'm not sure," Weskal replied, reaching for his chin. "Mom and Dad are right, but I'm with Whams only so far as to see an improvement in our lives thanks to you, Wyatt. Truthfully, in your place, I'd be an indecisive mess. The only advice I can give you is that before you press the trigger, you better be damn sure that your shot will not miss." The heterochromatic-eyed man stared at his family in silence for several long moments that passed in the blink of an eye. Then, as he felt doubt and fear leave his body, he smiled widely and openly. Was it the right decision? It probably wasn't. Did it feel right to take it? Without a doubt. What more was there to it? Nothing. In that case, I've made my decision. I'll inform Commander Redford and seek guidance on the adoption process. Wirt leaned forward slightly. "If that's what you've decided, Wyatt, then we'll respect your decision and we'll do everything we can to avoid causing you trouble." Weskal chuckled. "Blue Bloods can leave their letters all they want. We don't have any obligation to read them. Fuck those high and mighty blue-blooded pricks." Wyatt laughed. "Mr. Warlow would be proud if he heard you. Mom, could you please buy him something in my name? Make sure he's okay?" Winona nodded. "Of course, sweetie. That stubborn old man will try to reject your gift, but I won't let him. Do you want to give him anything in particular?" "High-quality painting tools, canvas, and paints. I'll leave the rest to you," Wyatt replied. "Very well. I'll see to it. It'll be a good excuse to prepare his favorite meal and soften him up," Winona replied. Then her expression turned to curious worry. "Wyatt, sweetie, perhaps you should look into changing your uniform. It looks tight on you." "It does?" Wyatt asked, taking a moment to inspect his uniform. He had never paid much attention to his uniform before, unless it was to ensure it was clean and presentable. But now that his mother pointed it out, he could feel it and see it. It felt tighter, smaller for some reason. "I guess it does. Thanks, Mom. I'll present an inspection request to the logistical division later." "So, since we don't have to hide anymore on about that dive set?" Wham asked almost innocently a second later. Wyatt stared at his younger brother while Weskal glared at him. "You can do whatever you want with the credits I sent you. Mom, Dad, maybe you should think about buying books on noble social norms or try to find an exiled noble willing to teach you for a price. It won't be much, but maybe that way you can better protect yourselves from blue bloods trying to order you around. Now that you're going to be under my house service, you don't have to obey anyone except me or an Aster. Understood?" "I obey, my lord," Wham and Weskal said in unison, smiling when they saw their older brother recoil in disgust. "And never ever call me lord. If I'm not letting the people of Newtown and the Screaming Forest call me lord, I'm not letting you do it," Wyatt proclaimed with a shudder, causing his parents and siblings to laugh at his expense. "Oh," Wirt muttered, suddenly stopping as an idea popped into his head. "Son, maybe we could travel to your land?" Wyatt shook his head, frowning firmly. "There are still Drazen on the planet. Scattered, hiding, cowering. I'm not letting you near Hago until each and every single one of those carrion feeders dies in a fire." Taking a deep, calming breath, he continued. "Besides, Hago will take a long time to recover. Hastrung was returned to the control of House Ferentis, who remained neutral in this conflict. Much like House Gimor is. As long as they remain neutral, you should be relatively safe." He paused for a moment. "I would like for you to go to Matcha in Finnegan territory, but getting past trader patrols." He shook his head, unable to finish that line of thought. "Volantis is the safest place for you to be at the moment. If I could, I would go there and take you with me. But we have a mission to follow. I'm sorry for leaving you behind." "You don't need to apologize for that, Wyatt," Wirt replied in that gentle but firm, reassuring tone of his. We love you, son. Just promise us you will take care of yourself. Don't worry about us. We'll make do, as we always have. I will, Wyatt replied with a nod. I love you all too. I'll contact you again as soon as I can. If you need anything, don't hesitate to contact me. We won't, dear, Winona said, staring into his eyes. After a few moments, she smiled tenderly. I miss your brown eyes, sweetie. But those new beautiful pearls of yours fit you so well. Farewell. A moment later, the connection ended. Alone in the communications chamber, Wyatt leaned back, closing his eyes. He felt content. Matcha, capital city. Life couldn't be better for Ilidor Feduli. He had never given much thought or care to the existence of gods, deities, spirits, and other unnatural figments of imagination, folklore, and myth in the past. But with how his fortunes had shifted, he was starting to wonder if such entities truly existed, or if his great good fortune was the product of fate itself, carving a path to glories and greatness that before the Duke's coup and the subsequent succession dispute had been occluded and denied to him. As the lowly seventh son of his unremarkable parents, his future was bleak indeed. But now, none of his previous laments and misfortunes mattered. House Feduli was but a middling minor house, that was all too true, but the winds of fortune had smiled upon him most generously. Once, not even a year ago, he was but a mere baronet in charge of a small textile complex. Then tragedy struck his family, delivered by the hands of a daring pirate group, extinguishing the lives of two of his older brothers. He pretended to cry, of course. Empty words of sadness and pain escaped his mouth as he celebrated their demise. Without them, their shadows no longer cover him. But it wasn't enough to secure himself recognition and glory. Then, the coup happened, and House Finnegan hurriedly declared its allegiance to the Prince and Royal House Astor. How fortuitous! A chance opened to display his genius, talents, and capabilities within the Royal Navy as part of the Logistica Division. Pressed for time and in desperate need of graduates, the Academy's graduation requirements laxed as applications for entry skyrocketed. He was welcomed, of course, but he was relegated to monitoring comm channels, supply routes, and cargo deliveries across Matcha's main starport. His role in service to the Royal Navy was almost worse than his previous position outside of it, but something deep within him knew he was destined for more. For greatness that so rightfully belonged to him, Ilidor Feduli. Once again, fortune smiled upon him when he discovered a discrepancy in the cargo among several shuttle rides. That alone earned him a promotion, a note of recognition, and the praise of his house's head. It didn't grant him the rank of baron, but his second achievement did. This time he discovered a smuggling ring pilfering weapons in numbers enough to arm a militia. More accolades, more recognition, and another promotion within the logistical division. Then he made his most significant discovery of all. An incredibly competent commoner who begged to be under his command. Nothing more than an opportunistic little cockroach trying to leech off his greatness, but one that he welcomed gladly once he saw his capabilities. He took notice of changes in numbers no one else could, small little errors that could be fixed easily, and pointed out lazy personnel for re-education and punishment. And, as it was right and proper, all the glory and recognition was his to claim. With the help of his loyal commoner, he had been recognized, at long last, by the prince's forces and invited to join them. Truly, life couldn't be better. Cheers, Ilidor said, raising a glass of a fine cognac usually reserved for his failure of a father. That was fine. He didn't need him. The head of House Feduli had personally praised him. That single gesture meant more to him than anything his mother, father, and the rest of his pathetic siblings had ever said or done in the past. Tomorrow, the legend of my greatness begins. My legacy shall echo throughout the annals of House Feduli. Who knows? Mayhaps I'll become head of the house in the future? He asked, before a morbid, ambitious laugh echoed in the room. The fireplace roared nicely. The fine suit he'd bought to celebrate his elevation to baron fit him perfectly, and the comfortable couch he was making use of massaged his aching body with little tremors that made him moan from time to time. Taking a large gulp from his drink, he set the almost empty glass aside, choosing to enjoy the peace that he'd earned through toil and good fortune. If I believed in deities, I'd offer words of thanks, he said, closing his eyes. How about a sacrifice? Ilidor's eyes snapped open when he heard the familiar voice of his faithful commoner aide. He opened his mouth, ready to admonish the impertinent fool for disturbing him when he felt something pierce his neck. There was no pain, yet his body failed to respond to his commands. As panic began to spread, he realized something. Why was his servant present? He hadn't invited anyone to join him in his time of privacy. Illidur tried to speak, but found himself unable even to babble incoherently. He could breathe, but he couldn't move anything other than his eyes. "I thank you, my lord." "You've played your part perfectly," the man said as he walked around the couch, revealing his form covered by a lightweight black armor, almost like a body glove. A moment later, he stood before the paralyzed noble. "You need not thank me, Illidur. Every success of yours was never yours to begin with. They were done by my design as I scoured for the most useful face within my immediate reach. But now that I've reached my objective, you're no longer useful." Illidor's heart was pounding hard and fast, his breathing was ragged, and his eyes were fixed on his servant, barely able to hear him speak amidst his panicked mind. If the man before him took notice of his distress, he showed no interest whatsoever. "Do not despair, Illidor. I will remember your proud sacrifice. Once his lordship finds ultimate victory, unseating the pretender prince, you will be honored beyond comparison as a hero of the principality. Rejoice, for I will carry your burden for a time. A martyr you will become once a better face is within my grasp," the man said with a cruel, uncaring smile as he opened a small briefcase. Illidor tried desperately to peer inside it, but couldn't see anything. He watched in complete impotence as his servant, as the traitor and charlatan before him pulled out a small vial. Silently, he filled a small syringe, only to then jab it into his forearm. Then, he refilled the syringe and turned to him, unceremoniously injecting whatever was in it. If he could have screamed, he would have done so at that very moment, for pain far beyond anything he'd experienced coursed through his body. He couldn't even cry. But the man in front of him didn't even flinch as he continued talking. "I will ensure your body is properly disposed of and never found. Your loved ones and friends, enemies and rivals, servants and strangers alike will fail to see the difference. I thank you, Illidor, for your most noble sacrifice." He paused for a moment, then smiled. Illidor stared in horror as the man's face started to shift. Small ripples and bulbous protrusions moved under his skin, barely perceptible, but they were there. It took him almost a minute to realize that something was pinching, burning, and stabbing him across his entire face, right under his skin. Unable to do anything else, Illidor screamed inside his mind, begging for help that wouldn't come. As the process continued, Jade was already making plans to infiltrate the false prince's staff further. He pondered on what sort of mayhem and chaos would be the most destructive in order to aid the Lord Regent.